Hello everyone, I'm glad you're here. I'm Echo and welcome to my channel. This is your time to relax, to settle in and let a story drift over you. Today I'll be sharing a longer story, told from the perspective of the person who lived it. So sit back and let's begin. The House with the Locked Door. I moved into an old rental house about 3 years ago. It wasn't anything fancy, just a 2-story place on a quiet street. The paint was peeling, the floors creaked, and the kitchen smelled faintly of onions no matter how much I scrubbed. But it was cheap, and at that time in my life, cheap was all that mattered. The house had character though. You know how some old places seem to breathe around you? Like they've collected so many lives and memories that they almost hum with it? That's what this house felt like. From the moment I walked in, I knew it had seen things. The layout was strange. Long, narrow hallways, doors that didn't line up quite right. And in the upstairs hallway, tucked between 2 bedrooms, was a door with a padlock on it. When I signed the lease, I asked the landlord about it. He brushed me off, saying, "That's just storage. Nothing you need to worry about." At first I didn't. But the longer I lived there, the more that locked door started to get under my skin. The first night I heard noises upstairs. Scraping, dragging, the sound of something shifting across the floor. I told myself it was an old house settling. That's what people say, right? Houses settle, but the sounds kept happening. Always at night, always from behind that locked door. One Saturday I invited a few friends over. We were hanging out in the living room drinking cheap beer and eating takeout. Around midnight we all heard it. 3 distinct thuds, like someone dropping something heavy upstairs. My friend Mark raised an eyebrow and said, "You got a roommate you haven't told us about?" I laughed it off, but inside I felt cold. Later, after everyone left, I crept upstairs and pressed my ear against the locked door. For a moment, there was nothing. Just silence. Then, the faint sound of breathing. Slow, steady, like someone sleeping just inches away. I stumbled back, heart pounding. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was worked up from the beers, that maybe I was just hearing my own breath echoing weirdly through the wood. But the image of someone sleeping behind that door wouldn't leave my mind. Days passed, then weeks. I started avoiding that part of the hallway altogether, but the noises continued, sometimes scraping, sometimes thuds, sometimes, worst of all, a faint humming, almost like a lullaby. I asked the landlord about it again. He frowned and said, "Look, it's just storage. Don't mess with it." Seriously, that made it worse. Why was he so firm about it? What was he hiding? One night I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a flashlight, a hammer and a chisel. I figured if it was just storage, what harm would it do to take a look? The lock wasn't new. It took about 10 minutes of careful work before it gave way with a sharp snap. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might faint. I pushed the door open. The room was small and dark, with dust floating in the beam of my flashlight. At first it looked empty, just bare wooden floors and peeling wallpaper. But then, in the corner, I saw a stack of boxes. I knelt down and opened one. Inside were dozens of photographs. Old, black and white, curling at the edges. Some were of families smiling stiffly in front of the house. Others were of children playing in the yard, but a few were off. In some, the people looked scared. Eyes wide, mouths tight, hands clenched together. In one photo, a little girl stood alone in that very room, her face pale and tear-streaked. I dropped the photo and opened another box. This one was filled with journals, handwritten, in shaky cursive. Pages and pages describing strange rituals, sacrifices, and something about keeping the house alive. My stomach turned. I slammed the box shut, suddenly aware of how quiet the room had become. Too quiet. Then, from somewhere deep inside the house, I heard it. A low, drawn-out creak, like a door opening. Not the one I had just unlocked. Another one. Somewhere else. I bolted. Ran downstairs, out the front door, and didn't stop until I was in my car. I drove to a friend's place and stayed the night. The next morning I forced myself to go back. The padlocked door was shut again. A new lock, shiny and solid, like I had never touched it. I called the landlord demanding answers. He sighed and said, "I told you not to mess with it. That door isn't for tenants, it's for the house." I moved out the following week. I didn't even stay the full month I'd paid for. I left half my stuff behind because I couldn't stand to go back in alone. Sometimes late at night I still hear the sounds, scraping, dragging, a faint lullaby that I swear comes from nowhere. And I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed just a little longer, if I had opened just one more box. And that's where this story ends. A simple rental house, a locked door, and the kind of mystery that clings to you long after you've walked away. Take a breath. Let the unease slip off your shoulders. There's more to come, but for now, we'll leave that house behind. Let's continue with another story, this time from r/AITA. It's longer, it's layered, and it's told entirely in the words of the person who lived it. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister announce her pregnancy at my wedding? So, here's the deal. I, 28F, got married last year. My husband and I had been planning the wedding for almost 2 years, saving up every penny, pouring our hearts into the details. I'm not flashy, but I really wanted the day to feel like us. Small, elegant, meaningful. I have one younger sister, Hannah, 26F. We've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child, always praised for being the pretty one, the social butterfly, the one who brought people together. I was the bookworm, the responsible one, the one who quietly did everything right but never got much recognition for it. When I got engaged, Hannah seemed excited. She offered to help with the planning, asked about colours, dresses, food. But there was something in her tone that always made me uneasy, like she was already imagining how she'd shine at my wedding. About 3 months before the big day, she called me and dropped her own news: she was pregnant. It wasn't planned, and she admitted she was nervous, but she also sounded thrilled. I was happy for her, truly. I congratulated her, sent her a little care package, and told her she'd be an amazing mom. But then, 2 weeks later, she called again. This time, her tone was different. She said, "So, I was thinking, maybe I could announce the pregnancy at your wedding. You'll have all the family there. It'll be such a beautiful moment, and it'll take some pressure off me from having to tell people one by one." I froze. My immediate gut reaction was no, absolutely not. My wedding was supposed to be about me and my husband. We had spent 2 years planning every detail, making sure it reflected our story, our love. I didn't want to share that spotlight with anything else, no matter how joyful. But I didn't say no right away. I told her, "Let me think about it." For days I wrestled with it. I imagined the moment, her clinking a glass, standing up in her dress and saying, "We're expecting!" The crowd gasping, clapping, cheering. And in that instant, the entire event would shift. Every conversation afterward would be about Hannah's baby. People would forget about the vows we'd written, the ceremony we'd crafted, the details we'd spent months on. They'd remember my wedding as the day Hannah announced she was pregnant, and I couldn't stomach that. So I called her back and said gently, "I love you, and I'm so happy for you, but no, please don't announce your pregnancy at my wedding. That day needs to be about me and husband's name. You'll have plenty of other chances to share your big news." There was a long silence. Then she said, "Wow, I can't believe how selfish you are. This isn't a competition." I told her it wasn't about competition, it was about boundaries. She hung up on me. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, she barely spoke to me. She didn't help with the planning like she had promised. She even skipped my bridal shower, claiming she was too tired. My mum started guilt-tripping me too, saying things like, "Would it really be such a big deal? Can't you just let her have her moment?" But I held firm. My husband backed me up completely. The wedding day arrived. Hannah showed up, but she looked sour the entire time. She refused to be in certain photos, sat at the table with her arms crossed and barely smiled. Thankfully, she didn't make any announcement, but she made sure her attitude was obvious enough that people noticed. Afterward, a few relatives called me dramatic for not just letting her share the news. They said weddings are about family, and her announcement would have been a joyful addition. But others told me I did the right thing, that Hannah has a long history of making everything about her, and if I'd caved, she would have stolen the spotlight from me on the one day that was supposed to be mine. Even now, months later, Hannah and I are barely speaking. She says I humiliated her and made her feel unwelcome. I've tried to explain that it wasn't about her pregnancy, it was about the timing, but she won't hear it. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister announce her pregnancy at my wedding? And that's the story. A question of boundaries, of family dynamics, and of how hard it can be to hold your ground when people accuse you of being selfish. Take a breath with me, let that one settle. More stories are still to come, but for now we'll leave it right there. I'm glad you're still with me. Settle in, breathe a little, and let this next story unfold in its own time. I'm going to tell it exactly as it was written. First person, unhurried, so it can keep you company while you relax or focus on whatever you're doing. The ledger in the back room. I didn't plan on going back to my hometown. It's one of those places where the sky feels too big. The roads remember your name, and people remember what you did in 8th grade more than they remember your birthday. But my mother called and told me my grandfather's antique store needed to be cleared out. He had passed away in the spring, gently and quietly, the way he did everything. I loved him, and I hated that I hadn't seen him as often as I should have. I took a week off work, rented a dusty little short-term place above the diner on Maple, and promised myself I'd keep it simple. Sort, donate, sell, and go home. The first morning I opened the shop, the bell above the door made that same timid sound it had made when I was 8, and thought the glass cabinets were museums. Everything looked smaller. The big oak counter where he used to sit had a dent on the corner that made perfect sense to my hands when I touched it, like my memory had grooves that matched. I could smell old spice and lemon oil and the faint powdery whisper of old paper. The front room was crowded with dressers, mirrors, cracked leather suitcases, and a whole parade of clocks, each with their own idea of time. But it was the back room that I had avoided when I was a kid. It always felt colder back there, like the sun had decided the front was worth warming and the back wasn't. I had a system ready, red tags for donate, blue tags for appraise, yellow for keep. My brother texted me around noon. He couldn't make it out for another few days, work. So it was just me and the dust and the radio I found under the counter, tuned to a station that used to play every morning when we'd eat warm cinnamon bread in the tiny kitchen. The girl at the diner had slipped me a brown paper bag with 3 slices and said, "On the house." He gave my grandmother a fair price for a hope chest when she needed it. People around here said things like that with a kind of soft pride, like it mattered that someone had been kind. The day wore on. I peeled tape, tied tags, stacked paperbacks in a box that had once carried tangerines. My hands remembered the way the glass sliding doors on the display case stuck for a second before moving, exactly the way the summer of my 12th year had stuck before it slid into fall. Late afternoon light did that golden thing across the floorboards, and I finally went into the back room because I'd run out of reasons not to. Back there the air was still like a held breath. Shelves climbed to the ceiling with plastic bins labelled in my grandfather's perfect, slanted handwriting, doilies, keys, buttons, lace, watch parts. It felt like a museum of small purposes that had outlived their big ones. I found the ledger on the 3rd shelf up, tucked between a cigar box and a stack of postcards bound in string. It wasn't like the other ledgers, the ones that listed numbers in tidy columns with dates and tally marks. This one was cloth-bound, navy blue, the corners worn soft. The cover had no title. When I opened it, I saw names, not items or prices, names, dates, and short notes written in a careful hand. I sat on the stool under the bulb with a chain you have to pull twice to get it to behave. Dust motes hummed in the light like they were practicing a hymn. At first, the entries didn't make sense. L. Alvarez, May 1989, baby blanket, returned, no charge. Mrs. Combs, September 1991, ring from the river, keep it safe. Danny M., July 1994, watch he can't keep, hold until he wants to be on time. There were hundreds of these, each with a little story in less than a sentence. It took a few pages for my brain to make the leap. He wasn't writing sales. He was writing safekeeping. He was writing favours. He was writing little covenants he made with people and never told anyone about. The ledger was less a book and more a net he had thrown into the town's past to catch the small things before they slipped away. I ran my finger along the dates until I saw my own last name. Once, twice, and then again. The first was my mother's. E. Brand, November 1997. Letter she won't mail. Keep until she forgives herself. The next was mine. A. Brand, June 2003. Library card, for when she wants to borrow time. I remembered that summer. I had sat on this same stool and cried into my t-shirt because we were moving from the house with the crabapple tree, and I thought everything good had a lock on it and I didn't have the key. He had given me a library card back then, punched my name into it with an old metal tool and said, Every card is a key, honey. Some doors look like paper. I kept turning pages. The entries didn't stop. They got closer together like something had picked up speed. The last one was from the winter before he died. Mr. Lake, January 2024, invoice reversed, because some debts aren't money. The name tugged at me. Mr. Lake. I knew that name. My grandfather and Mr. Lake had played checkers every Sunday at a little table next to the window. They had argued about the weather like it owed them both something. I was suddenly painfully aware of how little I knew the actual currents under the surface of this town. I knew who ran the donut fryer and which teacher would look at you over her glasses like she had an X-ray machine in them, but I didn't know that my grandfather had kept people's lives safe in a back room, quietly, for 40 years. I should have put the ledger back. That would have been the simple, respectful thing. But grief is a key that opens doors you didn't mean to walk through. I pulled the next bin toward me, and the next. I found the baby blanket, soft as a sigh, folded like a prayer. A ring with a river stone set into it that looked like the Guiders Creek shore in June. A broken watch in a felt pouch with a sticky note that said, "For when minutes matter again." My throat felt tight. I took each thing out with both hands, the way you carry a sleeping child from a car seat. I started sorting. On the counter in the front room I made 3 rows, things to return if I could, things too old to find their way home, and things that felt like they wanted to stay right here. People came in because they saw the open sign and didn't realise we were closed for good. I told them I was cleaning out. They told me about the time he had fixed a lamp for free, or sent them home with a teacup for their collection, because no one should have to drink sorrow out of a paper cup. I wrote down names and numbers. I tried to learn the shape of his kindness from the way people described it. That night I took the ledger with me. I know, maybe I shouldn't have, but it felt like a map, and I needed to understand the territory. I sat at the little table in the rental with the window open to the alley, and the diner's neon sign flashing blue on the page every few seconds. I read until the words started to float. The next morning I started with the easy ones. Mrs. Combs had passed, but her granddaughter came in when I called and held the ring to the light like it was a fish, and she wanted to see the scales. She cried softly and said thank you 6 times. The Alvarez family moved away, but the baby blanket fit just right around a new baby in a new town with the same last name. I mailed it with a letter that said, "He kept it warm for you." For the watch, I found Danny on social media with help from the diner girl and messaged him, and he drove 2 hours to pick it up. He stayed with me in the empty shop for a while, holding the pouch like it might fly off. He confessed he thought the watch made time heavier, but in a good way, like he could feel the minutes instead of only watching them leave. It felt like I was doing something right for once, like I could turn this week into a bridge instead of a box. But then Mr. Lake walked in, and the air changed. He was thinner than I remembered and wore his good hat. He put his hand on the bell at the counter and pressed it twice without ringing it, like he wanted to make sure it was really there. I told him hello in that too bright voice you use when you don't know how much of yourself you're allowed to show. He nodded at the ledger. "Found his book, did you?" I said yes, and he said, "I figured you might." He looked around at the clocks. They don't agree on much. Then he asked me if I had found anything with his name on it. I told him about the last entry, the reversed invoice, and he nodded again, and something in his face folded. He told me the story like he was untying a knot with his fingers. Last January he had a bill he couldn't pay. Not big by some standards, but big enough when your lungs are tired and your winter coat needs lining. He had brought in a box to sell, knickknacks he called them, but they were his wife's things. She had died 3 winters before, and he couldn't keep the heat on, and the medicine coming without letting something go. My grandfather opened the box and saw her hairbrush with the missing bristles, a silk scarf with a coffee stain that wouldn't let go, 2 porcelain birds that didn't match but refused to admit it. He had written up the invoice, put it under the box, and then, without a word, he turned his pen over and drew a line through the number. "This is for checking the weather, not paying for it," he had said. He kept the box anyway, carefully, wrapped it in tissue like it was brand new, and wrote Mr. Lake's name in the ledger because everything needed a place. Mr. Lake didn't ask for the things back. He asked if he could sit. We sat at the checker table that wasn't for sale and wouldn't be. He told me about my grandfather's laugh, the one that came out when the church ladies pretended not to gossip and then gossiped anyway. He told me about the time the creek rose and the kids ran barefoot down Maple, because school was closed, and how my grandfather kept a line of cups filled with lemonade like a parade of suns right there on the counter. When I finally asked if he wanted the box, he shook his head slow. I think he already returned it, and I think you know what I mean. He touched the ledger with 2 fingers like it was a forehead he was blessing, tipped his hat and left. I watched him go the way you watch a ship that knows the waters. By the 3rd day, word had spread. People came by with stories they wanted to return or stories they wanted to borrow. I didn't have the capacity for all of it, but I tried anyway. A woman brought in a key with a ribbon tied to it and asked if he had ever kept a ribboned key for her mother. I checked the bins like I was checking a heartbeat. Nothing. She smiled anyway and said, maybe he kept it by not needing to. A teenage boy hovered by the postcards and asked if it was true that Mr. Brand had a drawer full of wild marbles, his words, and I showed him the jar that looked like a tiny planetarium. He held a blue one up to the light and said, "This is how I imagine tomorrow." All week, I felt like I was walking inside a chord, the kind you hear in a song at the exact right moment when you remember that being alive is a complicated, shining thing. I felt close to my grandfather in a way I hadn't let myself feel in years. I slept with the ledger on the nightstand. I ate toast with jam standing at the shop window like a familiar ghost. On the 4th night, my brother arrived with the kind of energy people bring when they've missed the first act and want to clap too loud. He hugged me, real and tight, and I realised I had been hungry for that particular sibling comfort, the kind that says, I know where our scars came from. He asked what he could do, and I handed him a stack of Polaroids that needed names. He laughed, then looked at me, then stopped laughing because he saw the ledger. He read it later than he should have, sitting on the floor in our grandfather's office. He didn't say much at first. He's a quiet crier when he does cry, and he wiped his face with the sleeve of the hoodie he's had since sophomore year. When he finally spoke, he said, "I used to think I had to earn being kept." Then he closed the book and set his hand on it, and we were both quiet because some truths make echoes. On the last day, there were only a few entries left without answers. Some names were now just headstones or stories with no forwarding address. I made a new page in the back of the ledger and titled it, in my messy print, "Still Looking." I copied those names there and put a note under each, where I'd try next, who might know, what clue the town had offered me. And then I wrote our family name again, underlined. I wrote A. Brand, August 2025, the ledger. Keep until ready to let it rest. I didn't know if that was the right thing to write, but it felt like the only honest thing. People asked me if we were going to sell the place. The realtor had his business card ready. My mother told me to do what would give me peace, which in my family can mean opposite things on a Tuesday and a Thursday. My brother walked the creaky hallway and did that thing he does when he's thinking hard, tapping his thumb against his ring finger, a rhythm only he can hear. I slept badly, dreamt of clocks arguing, of letters unmailed finding their own stamps. Here's what I did. I opened the door one more morning without deciding. I turned the sign to open and stood behind the tender oak of the counter with my palms on it, like I was taking a pulse. I watched 3 people find the exact thing they didn't know they were missing. An older man held a fishing lure in his palm like it was a tiny glittering promise. 2 sisters argued about a cracked vase and then bought it together anyway, laughing. A little girl pressed her face to the glass of the marble jar and pointed at one like she had discovered a new moon. And I felt it. The answer, not in my head, but in the part of me that keeps the map of who I am. I didn't want to sell the store. I wanted to open it. Not as a business the way it had been, exactly, but as a place where the town could find what it had set down, if only for a while. A place where safekeeping counted as currency. A place where a ledger could keep telling the truth of people in tiny sentences that made a life. I told my brother that night, out loud, nervous. He looked at me and said, "You always were the one who liked to keep things from falling between the cracks." Then he laughed and added, "Also, you're better at the register." We took a picture of the ledger on the checkers table and sent it to Mum. She wrote back a heart and then, "He'd like that." There are practical things, of course. Permits, taxes, roofs that creak and gutters that pretend they're mere suggestions. I'll keep my other job for now and open the shop on weekends. My brother will fix what he can fix and barter his time for pie because Miss Dixie at the diner insists that pie is the right wage for a good deed. We'll catalogue the bins better. We'll ask people to write their own little sentences when they entrust us with something to hold. We'll call that page in the ledger Promises, and we'll let it grow like ivy where it wants to. Before I left that first week and drove back to my other life, I did one last thing. I took the entry with my mother's name, letter she won't mail, and I searched the office until I found it. I knew it before I saw her handwriting. The envelope was addressed but not stamped. Inside, a letter to a friend she'd grown up with, a friend she hurt by leaving and never explaining why. The words were the kind that sit behind your ribs and ask to be let out only when you're ready to tell the truth. I didn't read it. That wasn't mine to read. I put it in a new envelope, wrote my mother's current address on it, and added a stamp. I didn't put it in the mail. I carried it home in my purse, heavy as a stone and light as an answered question. A week later, I sat with her on the porch while the afternoon did that drifting thing that makes everything feel like a memory. I told her about the ledger and the way the town breathed around it. I put the envelope in her hand and said, "He kept this safe until you could decide." She cried a little, then laughed a little at herself for crying, then held the letter like it could burn and heal both. I don't know if she mailed it. I don't need to know yet. Some doors people open with you beside them. Some they open at night with the hallway light off, and that's their right. The store smells the same when I unlock it on Saturdays. Dust, lemon oil, paper. The clocks still have their private debates. People push the door with their shoulder and look around, and you can feel the way they steady themselves at the sight of all those small histories stacked and shining. Children touch the glass with their whole hand. Teenagers check their hair in the old oval mirror and pretend not to. Old men ask after items that only exist in their memory, and then find something close enough to carry home feeling lucky. Every week I write in the ledger. Not sales, not really. I write names and dates and small sentences that might add up to a town. Boy with the blue marble, kept safe while his mother was late. Mrs. P, cookie tin returned full of buttons and better stories. S. Lake came by to sit, left a checkers move I won't see until next Sunday. The pen feels good in my hand. Honest. I use the same ink my grandfather used because I like the way it dries. Not all at once, but surely. I used to think legacy was a plaque, or a story people told about you on holidays. Now I think it's the kind of place people walk into and breathe easier. I think it's a ledger that says, here you are, and here you are, and here. Look, here you are again. Maybe I left for a while because I needed to forget how much it matters to keep small things safe. Maybe I came back because I couldn't not. People ask me how long I'll keep the store open, like they're trying to schedule their nostalgia. I tell them, as long as it wants to stay, as long as there are buttons looking for blue thread and postcards that still know the route to the right kitchen drawer, as long as someone has a thing they need to set down for a bit, as long as the ledger has room to remember. Sometimes, late in the day when the light makes the dust look like it learned to be beautiful, I pull the chain on the back room bulb and stand with the bins listening. It's still colder back there. The quiet is heavy and kind. I say goodnight to the watch that will be picked up soon, and to the wedding veil that lost its bride but found a granddaughter who likes to play pretend. I say goodnight to the ring with the river stone, and to the baby blanket who finally met the baby who had been on his way for 35 years. I say goodnight to my grandfather, out loud, because I am older now and unafraid of talking to the air if the air is listening. When I lock the front door and start the walk up Maple toward the diner, people wave. The sky is still too big. The road still remembers. The neon sign still blinks blue on the sidewalk like a heartbeat you can see. I feel tired the way you feel tired after doing a thing that is both work and rescue. I tell myself I'll make tea and try to read 3 pages of a book and fall asleep after 1.5. I thought going back would be a chore, a week of boxes and decisions and cheap tape that doesn't stick unless you talk sweet to it. Instead, it feels like the store returned me to myself the way it returned the ring and the blanket and the watch. I didn't plan on it. But most of the best things in my life waited for me in places I didn't plan to be, and they were patient about it. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm keeping a ledger. I'm learning the art of safekeeping. If you come by, I'll hold the door a second longer than necessary, because someone did that for me, and it changed how that day felt. If you have something you can't carry right now, I'll write your name down in neat letters, and I'll put it in the back with the others. I'll keep it until you're ready to pick it up. And if you never come back for it, that's all right too. Sometimes the point of a thing is simply that you got to set it down. I don't know how to end this except to say that some debts aren't money. Some debts are a ledger full of little promises you keep making, because someone taught you how. I'm trying to pay those. I'm trying to make the kind of place where people feel the shape of their lives more clearly. I'm trying to be the right person, at the right counter, in the right light, When someone walks in and says, "Do you have a minute?" and I can say, "Yes. We have time. Let's pause here. I hope this one kept you good company. Take a moment to breathe and get comfortable. For this next story, we're shifting into the R/TIFU style. That's today I effed up, but told in the same calm, unhurried way with plenty of detail. TIFU by pretending I could cook. So, today I fucked up. Or maybe it was yesterday, or maybe it was a slow-motion disaster that's been building for weeks. Either way, I managed to humiliate myself in front of my girlfriend, her family, and honestly myself. And it all started because I couldn't admit the truth. I can't cook. Not in the I burn toast sometimes way. Not in the I need to follow a recipe step-by-step way. No, I mean I cannot cook. If you gave me a recipe that said boil water, I would genuinely stand there second-guessing whether to put the lid on the pot or not. I survive on takeout, microwavable meals and frozen pizza. My stove is basically decorative. Now, my girlfriend Sarah, she's amazing, smart, kind, and, most importantly, a phenomenal cook. The kind of person who can walk into a kitchen, glance at whatever random ingredients are there, and whip up something that tastes like it belongs in a restaurant. She loves it too. Cooking is a happy place. Which is why, about a month ago, when she casually mentioned that her parents wanted to meet me, I made the single worst decision of my adult life. I said, I'll cook dinner for them. I don't know why I said it. Maybe I wanted to impress her. Maybe I wanted to show I was serious, that I could be the guy who makes an effort. Maybe some part of my brain thought, how hard can it be? People cook every day. Cavemen did it. Surely I can figure it out. Sarah's eyes lit up. Really? You'd do that? And instead of saying the reasonable, honest thing like, haha, no, I'd probably poison them, I just smiled and said, yeah, leave it to me. From that moment on, the lie snowballed. She told her mom, who apparently told everyone, and suddenly the plan wasn't just dinner. It was me cooking a special dinner that would prove I cared about Sarah enough to feed her family with my own 2 hands. I started to panic. I thought maybe I could secretly take lessons, like a montage in a movie. But real life doesn't have montages. Real life has me standing in a grocery store Googling romantic dinners easy and trying not to cry in the produce section. Eventually I settled on lasagna, because everyone loves lasagna, right? Garfield loved lasagna. It seemed hearty, classic, impossible to screw up. Plus it only had layers. How hard could layers be? Spoiler, very hard. I picked a Saturday evening for dinner. Sarah's parents, her brother, and even her grandmother were coming over. 5 guests. I borrowed a nice tablecloth from my neighbour, bought candles, even dusted the apartment. I was determined to fake it until I made it. The first problem hit immediately: the noodles. I didn't realise there were oven-ready noodles and regular noodles you have to boil first. I, of course, bought the wrong kind. When I got home and started assembling, I thought, why would you boil noodles before baking them? The oven will cook them, so I layered them in raw. Second problem, ricotta. The recipe I skimmed, I definitely didn't read it carefully, called for ricotta cheese. But the store was out, and I figured cottage cheese looked kind of similar. White, lumpy, vaguely dairy. Close enough. Third problem, timing. I started way too late. By the time Sarah's family knocked on the door, I was still chopping onions with tears streaming down my face like I'd just gone through a breakup. The oven wasn't even preheated. I panicked and threw everything together like a toddler stacking blocks. Sauce, noodles, cheese, meat, repeat. I shoved it into the oven, slammed the door and prayed. When everyone sat down, I tried to act casual. Sarah's mum complimented the candles, her dad poured wine, her grandmother patted my hand and said, "So nice of you to cook for us." My stomach was doing cartwheels. Then the smell hit. Not the warm, comforting smell of lasagna. Number. The smell of burning. I sprinted to the kitchen, opened the oven, and smoke billowed out like I had just summoned a demon. I'd forgotten to put a baking sheet underneath, and the sauce had spilled over, sizzling on the oven floor. I pulled the lasagna out, and it looked tragic. The noodles were still hard, the cheese was curdled, and the top layer was burnt black. When I tried to cut into it, the knife bounced off like I was sawing through plywood. Sarah looked horrified. Her parents tried to be polite. Her brother took one bite, crunched through the raw pasta, and said, "It's chewy." Her grandmother spit hers into a napkin and whispered, Bless his heart. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me. Sarah ended up ordering pizza. We ate it off the fancy plates I'd set out, pretending this was the plan all along. Her family was gracious, laughing it off, but I could see the disappointment in Sarah's eyes. Not because of the food, but because I hadn't just told her the truth from the start. After everyone left, I confessed. I told her I couldn't cook, not even a little, that I should have asked for her help, that I wanted so badly to impress her family I ended up embarrassing myself. She sighed, hugged me and said, "I don't care if you can cook. I care that you're honest with me. Next time, just tell me. We could have cooked together." So yeah, today I fed up by pretending I could cook when I absolutely cannot. But on the bright side, I learned two things. Honesty really is the best recipe, and lasagna should probably be left to people who aren't me. Let's leave it there for now. Another long, winding story told. The kind you can carry with you like background noise, or like a gentle rhythm in the room. For this next story, we're stepping into the world of r/relationships, a place where people lay out their lives in long paragraphs, hoping strangers might help them untangle the knots of love, family, and everything in between. I, 29, don't know if I should stay with my boyfriend, 31, after discovering what he's been hiding from me. I don't even know how to start this, except to say that my heart feels like it's been carrying a secret weight for weeks. I've been with my boyfriend Jason for 3 years. We met through friends at a trivia night, and right away I felt drawn to him. He was clever, the kind of person who could make an answer sound funny even when he wasn't sure if it was right. He had this quiet confidence about him, not loud, not arrogant, just steady. I had been through a string of relationships with guys who treated dating like a game they were supposed to win, and Jason felt different. From the start, things moved slowly in the best way. We didn't rush into living together. We took trips, stayed up late talking about books and music, and built the kind of routines that make you feel safe. Saturday mornings with coffee and crossword puzzles, Sunday afternoons walking through the park and rating dogs we saw out of 10, always giving every single one of them a 10. I thought we were building a future, and maybe we still are. But a month ago I found out something about him that I can't stop thinking about, and I don't know what it means. It started when I noticed he'd been acting different. Not distant exactly, but distracted, like his mind was always somewhere else. He'd check his phone and then set it down quickly if I walked into the room. He'd stay up later than usual saying he couldn't sleep. I asked him once if everything was okay, and he smiled and said, "Yeah, just stressed from work." I wanted to believe him. I did believe him, until I didn't. One night he left his laptop open on the couch when he went to take a shower. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen lit up with an email notification, and the subject line was, "Weekly meeting notes, recovery group." I froze. I didn't know what recovery group meant. My mind jumped straight to the worst possibilities: drugs, alcohol, gambling. My stomach dropped, and before I could stop myself, I clicked. The email was from someone named Mark, group coordinator, thanking Jason for sharing during the last meeting. It mentioned how brave he was for opening up about the anniversary coming up, and reminded him that he wasn't alone. That's all it said. No details, no specifics, just enough to light a fire of questions in my chest. When he came back from the shower, I closed the laptop and tried to act normal, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Later that night, I asked him again, gently, "Is everything okay? Is there something you're not telling me?" He looked at me for a long time like he was deciding whether or not to say something. Finally he sighed and said, "There's stuff from my past I've never told you. Stuff I didn't want you to see me differently for." I told him he could tell me anything, that I loved him, no matter what. That's when he told me. When he was 23, Jason got into a car accident. He had been drinking. Not full down drunk, but over the limit. He hit a tree. Nobody else was involved, thank God, but he broke his collarbone and walked away with bruises. It scared him so badly that he quit drinking altogether. He hasn't touched alcohol in 8 years. He said he joined a recovery group, not exactly AA, but something similar, where people meet once a week to talk about struggles, guilt, temptations. He said it helps him stay grounded, reminds him of what's at stake. And then he looked me in the eyes and said, "I never told you because I didn't want you to think I was dangerous or broken." I didn't know what to say. Part of me was relieved. It wasn't drugs or cheating or some hidden double life. But part of me felt shaken. Not because of the accident itself, but because he'd carried this with him for 3 years of our relationship without telling me. I tried to sit with it. I told him I was glad he trusted me enough to finally share it. I told him I was proud of him for staying sober all these years. I meant those things. But underneath, I felt this nagging unease. Why didn't he tell me sooner? We've talked about everything from childhood traumas to embarrassing teenage stories. We've talked about future kids, about what kind of parents we want to be. How could he leave out something this huge? Since that night, it's been sitting between us. He seems lighter, like he's glad the secret is out. But I feel heavier. I keep thinking about all the times we went out with friends and he made excuses about why he wasn't drinking. He always said he just didn't like the taste, and I accepted it. But now I know it wasn't the whole truth. Last week I tried to bring it up again. I told him I was struggling with the fact that he hid it for so long. He got defensive. He said, "I didn't hide it to lie to you. I hid it because I didn't want to be defined by my worst mistake. I wanted you to know me for who I am now, not who I was then, and I get that. I really do, but it still feels like a wall I didn't know was there. We've been quiet since then, not fighting, just quieter, like there's a layer of glass between us. So now I don't know what to do. I love him. He's been nothing but kind and supportive to me for 3 years. He's never given me any reason to doubt him. But I can't shake the feeling that our relationship isn't as transparent as I thought. Is it fair to feel this way? Am I overreacting to a secret he kept because of shame? Or is it a red flag that he could keep something this big from me for so long? That's the story. A relationship built on love and safety, shaken by one secret revealed after years of silence. Hi again, I'm glad you're still here. Take a deep breath, settle into wherever you are, and let's drift into this next story together. This one comes from r/no sleep, where the strange and the unsettling meet ordinary lives. This one is called I Found a Door in My Apartment That Wasn't There Before. I moved into this apartment 6 months ago. It's small, just a 1-bedroom in an older brick building downtown. Nothing fancy, but the rent was manageable and the location was good. The kind of place you choose because it feels safe, not because it feels special. The layout was simple, a front room that doubled as a living room and kitchen, a small hallway that led to the bathroom and bedroom, and a storage closet next to the bathroom. I remember walking through it during the showing and thinking, this is fine, this is enough. For the first few months, everything was normal. I worked, I came home, I cooked, I slept. The neighbours were quiet. The walls were thick enough that I never heard anyone on the other side, but about a month ago I noticed something strange. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom when I glanced at the hallway mirror, and in the reflection, I thought I saw a door. Not the bathroom door behind me, not the bedroom door to the side, a third door right next to the closet. I turned around and of course it wasn't there. Just the blank stretch of wall where the mirror had made it seem like something should be. I laughed at myself and blamed it on the bad lighting, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Every time I passed that spot in the hallway, I felt like something was missing, like the wall was thinner there, not quite solid. A week later, it changed. I came home late carrying groceries and almost dropped the bag when I saw it. A door. Exactly where I had imagined it before. Narrow, with a brass handle, painted the same beige as the rest of the walls, like it had always been part of the apartment. I stood there for a long time, groceries cutting into my hands, staring at it. I didn't touch the handle. I didn't even breathe too loudly. Finally, I backed away, put the food in the fridge, and told myself I was overtired. The next morning it was gone again. Just a wall. I didn't mention it to anyone. How could I? Hey, sometimes there's an extra door in my apartment. That's not the kind of thing you can explain without sounding insane. But it kept happening. Every few days the door would appear. Always in the evening, always when I came home after dark, and always by morning it would be gone. One night, I got brave. Or maybe just stupid. I reached out and touched the handle. It was cold. Colder than metal should have been in a heated apartment. My hand lingered there, and I swear I felt a faint vibration, like something humming on the other side, and almost turned it. Almost. But I pulled back. I didn't want to know. Not yet. The weeks went on, and the door started to haunt me. I'd catch myself staring at that patch of wall even when it wasn't there, waiting. I started sleeping badly, dreaming of endless hallways lined with identical doors. In the dreams, I'd open one and step through, and suddenly I'd be back in my apartment staring at the same blank wall. Finally, last Friday I broke. I had been drinking, just enough to loosen my nerves, and when I came home, the door was waiting, brass handles shining faintly in the dim light. I stood there for what felt like an hour, then I grabbed the handle and twisted. It opened. The air that came out was stale and cold, like a basement that hadn't been touched in decades. Inside was a narrow stairwell leading down into darkness. No light switch, no sound, just stairs disappearing into black. I should have closed it. I should have walked away. But instead I took out my phone, turned on the flashlight and stepped inside. The stairs went down farther than they should have. My building only has 4 floors and I'm on the 2nd. But the stairwell spiraled lower and lower, concrete steps worn smooth by feet that must have walked them long before me. After what felt like 10 minutes of descending, I reached the bottom. There was another hallway, long and narrow with doors lining both sides. The same beige paint, the same brass handles. Each door was numbered, but the numbers didn't make sense. 3, 14, 9, 27. No order, no pattern. I tried one of the handles. It turned easily, but the door wouldn't budge like it was glued shut. I tried another, same thing. Every door opened but didn't open. At the end of the hallway was a mirror. Tall, cracked, dusty. I raised my phone and the flashlight beam caught my reflection, except it wasn't quite me. The person in the mirror looked the same, but they were smiling, wide and unnatural while I stood there stone-faced. I dropped my phone. The light spun across the floor and in that moment of darkness I heard it. Dozens of doors creaking open behind me. I didn't look back. I grabbed the phone and ran. Up the stairs, 2, 3 steps at a time, heart pounding like a drum. I burst into my apartment and slammed the strange door shut behind me. When I opened my eyes, it was gone. Just the wall again. I don't know what to do. I haven't slept properly in days. Sometimes at night I hear faint knocking in the hallway, like hands tapping on doors that aren't there. I'm scared that one night the door will come back and I won't be able to stop myself from opening it again. That's the story. Eerie, unsettling, but told like an ordinary account from an ordinary person. The kind of thing that makes you wonder what's hidden in your own walls, waiting. I'm glad you're still here with me. Let's ease into this next story. It comes from r/AITA. And like many of those posts, it's about family, boundaries, and trying to figure out if you did the right thing. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my dad walk me down the aisle after years of him being absent? 27F am getting married this fall. I always imagined my wedding would be small, surrounded by people who love me, with moments that feel meaningful. The kind of day that isn't about the flowers or the photos but about the people who stand beside you. But the closer we get to the actual date, the more complicated things have become, and most of it centres around my dad. To explain, I need to go back a little. My parents divorced when I was 9. It wasn't messy on paper, but in reality it was. My dad left, not just left my mum, but left me. He moved 2 states away, started a new family and slowly over the years became a voice on the phone rather than a person in my life. At first he'd call once a week, then once a month. By the time I was in high school I'd hear from him maybe twice a year. He missed my band concerts, my birthdays, my prom. He didn't come to my college graduation. Every time he'd promised to visit, something would come up, a work trip, a sick relative, sometimes just silence. Meanwhile, my mum worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. My aunt and uncle stepped in for every dad moment I missed. My uncle taught me how to drive. My aunt walked me through filling out FAFSA forms for college. My mum was there for everything. Every late night study session, every heartbreak, every time I doubted myself. When I got engaged, I knew immediately who I wanted to walk me down the aisle, my mum. She's been both parents to me for almost 20 years. It felt obvious, natural, right. I didn't even think twice about it until I got a phone call from my dad a few months ago. Out of nowhere, he said, "I heard you're engaged. Congratulations." "I can't wait to walk you down the aisle." I froze. That wasn't the plan. That was never the plan. I told him gently, "Actually, I'm asking Mum to walk me down the aisle." There was a long pause, then he laughed like I was joking. When he realised I wasn't, his tone changed completely. He said, "That's not fair. I'm your father. It's tradition. People will expect it." I tried to explain. I told him it wasn't about tradition, it was about who has actually been there for me, who has earned that place beside me on the most important day of my life. He didn't take it well. He called me ungrateful, said I was punishing him for the divorce. He even said, "I helped bring you into this world." That should count for something. Since then, it's been non-stop. He's called, texted, even gotten his wife, my stepmom, to message me about how cruel I'm being. My grandmother on his side weighed in too, telling me I'd regret humiliating my father in front of everyone. And here's the part that's messing with my head. Part of me feels guilty. I know he wasn't there for me, but he's still my dad. He still wants this one symbolic moment, and maybe denying him that does look cruel from the outside. On the other hand, I can't shake the feeling that it would be dishonest, that walking down the aisle with him would be pretending he was the one who supported me all these years, when he wasn't. It would erase everything my mum did. It would erase her sacrifices, her love, her presence. My fiancé is fully supportive. He told me it's my choice and he'll back me up no matter what. My mum cried when I asked her to walk me down the aisle. Happy tears. She told me she'd be honoured, but she also said, "If you want to give him a small role, I'd understand." That's just who she is, always thinking about other people. As for me, I'm torn. I want to stand my ground, but the pressure from my dad's side of the family is eating at me. I don't want drama on my wedding day, but I also don't want to rewrite history just to make him feel better. So here I am, asking strangers on the internet, Aita for refusing to let my dad walk me down the aisle. That's the story. A daughter caught between tradition and truth, love and guilt, family and absence. It's the kind of situation where there's no easy answer, just the question of what matters most to you when the spotlight is finally on. We've shared a lot of stories together, some emotional, some unsettling, some messy in the way life is messy. For this last story, I thought I'd end on something lighter, still epth up, still full of detail, but the kind of mistake you can laugh about later once the embarrassment fades. TIFU by wearing the wrong outfit to my work Zoom call. So, today I fucked up, and technically it wasn't today, it was last Thursday, but the shame is still fresh enough that my face burns just thinking about it. I work from home. Like a lot of people, my daily routine is a weird mix of being professional from the waist up and a complete disaster from the waist down. Button-up shirt? Sure. Pyjama pants? Always. Nobody has to know. That's what I thought anyway. Last week we had a big Zoom meeting with a potential client. This wasn't just any meeting. It was one of those, if this goes well, we land the account and the company celebrates kind of meetings. My boss was nervous. My co-workers were nervous. And I was nervous because I was scheduled to give part of the presentation. The morning of, I overslept. My alarm went off at 7:30, but I snoozed it. Next thing I knew, it was 8:55, and the meeting was at 9. I launched myself out of bed like a cat thrown into water. I threw on a shirt, splashed water on my face, and logged in just in time. Now here's where the fuck-up begins. For reasons I still don't understand, I had decided to sleep the night before in a pair of novelty boxers, bright red, covered in cartoon chili peppers, with the words "hot stuff" written across the front. Don't ask why. I bought them as a joke gift for myself during quarantine. I never expected anyone to see them. Anyway, I logged into the meeting, camera on, smiling face. Everything looked fine. My boss introduced everyone, the client said hello, and I felt the tension in my shoulders start to ease. Halfway through though, I realised I'd forgotten one of my notes in the other room. Without thinking, I stood up. Yup, full frame, bright red chili pepper boxes. Hot stuff, in bold white letters. For a good 5 seconds before I realised what I'd done and sat back down like I'd been shot. The chat blew up instantly. One co-worker wrote emojis, another said, "Well, that's one way to spice up the meeting." The client himself chuckled and said, "At least we know you've got confidence." My boss just buried her face in her hands. I wanted to crawl under my desk and never return. The rest of the meeting limped on. I gave my presentation with the enthusiasm of someone awaiting execution. Nobody could look at me without smirking. By the end, I wasn't sure if we'd landed the client or if they were just too polite to hang up on us. Afterward, my boss called me privately. I thought I was fired. Instead, she said, "Next time, please wear pants." Then she laughed. Not a big laugh, but enough that I knew I wasn't doomed. The kicker? We actually landed the client. They said they appreciated our relaxed and authentic energy. So, in some backwards way, my chili pepper boxes helped close the deal. Still, lesson learned. From now on I'm wearing pants. Always. Even if I'm just checking my email. And that's where we'll leave it tonight. 8 long stories, each one different, each one carrying its own little world of mistakes, mysteries, heartbreak, and humour. I hope these stories kept you company, whether you listened while studying, winding down, or just letting the hours pass in the background. Thank you for being here, thank you for listening, take care of yourself, rest easy, and I'll see you next time. Good night.